Hey witches, Tiffany here, and today we are going to talk about spirit communication. I'm so excited to get to this topic. Oh yes, get it together. We have a lot to cover today. First of all, I want to say, now some people are naturally very intuitive and sensitive. They have very natural psychic abilities, but if you're like me, and you're like a little bit closed off and it takes a bit or a lot more work to kind of open yourself up to the spirit realms, don't worry, you can still do this. Everyone has some amount of psychic ability. It just comes easier to some people than to others. And that's really true about pretty much anything, mundane or magical. Anything you can try to do, for some people it's super easy, and for others it takes a lot of practice. So if your sixth sense is very stubborn, please, I highly encourage you, if you are interested in spirit communication, try it anyways. Just be patient and keep practicing. So there was my note of encouragement. Now you might notice that this video is pretty general, both in the sense that I'm going to offer multiple options without doing a heavy dive into any single one, and in the sense that if you look into certain traditions or ceremonial magical practices, some have a very specific way of communicating with spirits, and I'm not gonna go with any one particular very specific way. Now, I'm not gonna go into too much depth into some things like using certain divination techniques, because I have whole other videos on some of those techniques. And this video would be like 3 hours long if I tried to go into depth on every single one. So I'm just going to touch on how those techniques relate to spirit work in this video. I also don't want to go into a deep dive of any specific tradition because I want to keep this video applicable to everybody. So I want it to feel useful to a wider audience. And so that's why you will find that this video is a bit more general and not a deep dive into any one specific type of tool, ritual, method, or purpose. With that said, let's start off with who should you contact and why? If you're looking to build a relationship, to have ongoing communication and ongoing presence in your life, I highly recommend that you start off with ancestors. Now, the groundwork for this is in the video that I did last week, so that's going to be linked right up in that corner as well as down below in the description box. But, of course, you can build an ongoing relationship with any willing spirit. But I do recommend that you go into this knowing what you want out of that relationship, and you should be able to communicate that to them. Now, this could be short term, so say you go to a graveyard and you want dirt from a specific grave. So you sit down, you communicate with spirit, you explain to them that you would like to take some of the dirt from their grave and what you want it for. And then you get a yes, go ahead, or no, don't you touch my grave. Or it could be more of a long-term relationship, working with them on a regular basis. But you can't expect a person, living or dead, to want to build a relationship with you if your motivations and your intentions are unclear. But of course, there are other situations and circumstances in which you might want to contact a spirit. This could be quick communication with somebody you care about that has passed away. You could live in a house that is haunted, in which case you want to speak directly to the spirit of that house. Or maybe it's Samhain night and you want to have a seance. Throw the line out there in a general sense, see who catches, because it's fun and, curiosity. And now that I've mentioned talking to random strangers, let's discuss safety. If you're reaching out to ancestors, especially the recently deceased that you had a relationship, I'm assuming a healthy, happy relationship with, in your lifetime, you are most likely completely safe. You have nothing to worry about. But I highly recommend you have safety measures in place no matter who you are contacting. I also recommend that every witch, whether you practice spirit communication regularly or you never have and you never will, I always recommend that they have a foundation of banishing and cleansing practices already in place. Now, aside from a sound cleansing video and a video on cleansing and protecting your home and one banishing spell, which is a little bit different than just basic immediate emergency banishing, I don't actually have videos on these, which I really wish that I did right now, and I probably should make those. Because in my opinion, these are basic tools that every witch should learn early on. So if you don't know those things, please go out and do your research. Someday, if you're watching this from the future, if I've made those videos, I will link them below in the description box. But I will have to continue forward with the video, assuming that you know those foundational practices. So as far as safety goes, your safety precautions could be as simple as casting a circle, either a physical or an energetic one. So you create a space that can only be penetrated by those who are invited in, and then afterward, cleanse your space when you're done. But I have a couple of other recommendations of things that personally I like to do. So one of these is to light a candle. If you are also going to light a candle as an offering or to honor the spirits or to invite them in, the protection candle should be an entirely different candle. Don't try to combo them because they really are there for completely different purposes. So as I light that candle, I would say something loud like, "The light of this candle fills my space and nothing harmful can penetrate this protective light." Let it illuminate the space, and then of course, when it's time to extinguish it, also use it to remove anything negative from the space as well by saying a little something else. As I extinguish this candle, all invitations will be revoked. Nothing that entered this space while this candle was lit will linger here. Just something like that. Another option is to cast a circle, okay? So you cast your circle that you are in. Then within that circle, you also cast a triangle. So you have your sphere. Within that sphere is a pyramid. Within that pyramid is where your tool, if you're using one, is going to go. So for instance, again, you cast your circle around you, you're in it, your triangle will be in front of you, and then inside of that would be your pendulum and pendulum board, your runes, your spirit board, and just your hands, maybe part of your forearms, will be over the edge of that triangle in that space. Now, the reason we use a triangle, it's a pyramid because it's three-dimensional, right? The reason we use a pyramid for this is because pyramids are very powerful when it comes to manifestation. So you have your protective circle, and then within that circle, you have a manifestation space in which you manifest spirit, you invite them into that triangle, and it sort of contains them there. They're not like imprisoned there, but they can't exit into your space, right? So when you invite spirit into your space, you invite them directly into that triangle area. Those are just a few options, but you know what? We all want to be safe during spirit communication. So if you have other ways that you take precautions, that you protect yourself, and that you cleanse after spirit communication, please drop those down in the comments below. I always love new ideas. I also want to say, please, never, ever, ever threaten a spirit. That should go without saying, really. Don't say, "Give me this," or else, "Do this thing for me," or else. Don't be demanding. Respect them. You're asking them for a favor. And also, don't taunt them in an attempt to get a reaction. Okay, first of all, it's rude. And secondly, you may not like the reaction that you get. I think the only spirit that I would ever do that with is my friend who passed away, but only because I know her really, really well, and I know that she would find it funny. Charisse, get your skank ass out here and hang out with me. She's busy. Next, as part of your prep work, let's talk about offerings. I think it's always good to have an offering, but of course this is especially important if you are looking to build a long-term relationship with spirit. Or of course, if you're going to be asking for a favor as opposed to just reaching out of curiosity. So if you go to a gravesite, like I mentioned earlier, to collect some graveyard dirt. You know, it could be bringing fresh flowers. If you're working at home, and I do go into a little bit more depth with this in my ancestor work video, you can use incense. And of course, you can't go wrong with food or drink, especially an alcoholic beverage. You don't have to put it out right away during spirit communication. You don't necessarily need it as like bait, but it's more something you will place out or pour out at the end as a sort of thank you. If I was a ghost, you would need to bait me with chocolate and Riesling. Okay, let's talk about the different methods of communication you can use. Hey witches, I'm jumping in real fast to say that if you're enjoying this video, make sure to hit that thumbs up. It really helps me a lot. And if you're interested in more content, please check out my Patreon. The link for it is down below in the description box. First of all, because I gotta say it, you don't have to use any tools at all. This video is really outlining a ritual to initiate contact, but that doesn't mean that you can't ask for contact outside of this ritual time. You can ask them to bring forth messages in dreams, to give you signs in the world around you. Ask them to find a way to present themselves to you, especially if you are clairvoyant, clairaudient, all the clairs, you know. Now, if you aren't particularly sensitive, I would recommend this form more if you're trying to build a relationship with this spirit. The reason for this is because without the tools, it can take more time and effort to start making contact and also to start kind of building those intuitive muscles. But if you're building a relationship, that pays off in the long run because it helps to strengthen that intuition. You can speak to them, call out to them, ask them questions, ask them for guidance or advice anytime, anywhere, no divination tools required. I talked about this a bit more in last week's video about ancestor veneration and work, but I do want to stress again that spirit communication is most of the time very, very subtle. Unfortunately, it's not like in the movies where the planchette is, you know, like darting around the Ouija board, spelling things out and creating fully formed, easy to understand sentences, especially if, like in this segment we're talking about, you're not using a Ouija board, you're not using a tool. So if you are trying to open the channel in general and not using a specific tool, you need to pay attention to the signs around you. Communication can come in a lot of different forms. They are often very symbolic. And like I said, that is a muscle that you have to build up over time, not only to recognize, oh, this is a sign, not just a random occurrence, and you also have to learn to interpret what these signs and what these symbols mean. I do find that it's easier to recognize and understand these signs from ancestral spirits than from others though, which is partly why I kind of recommend starting with ancestors first if you are going to be trying to connect with spirits on a regular basis. So if you set up the ritual and your intention is to ask them, send me signs, partake in my life, you know, I have questions, can you answer them? And you're not expecting an answer right then, you're patient, you're giving it time, it can really happen outside of that ritual time and space. But during this ritual time, you can also meditate and talk to them. Open up your senses to allow them to answer any questions that you have. So, example I used earlier, if you're sitting at someone's gravesite, you've asked them, can I take some dirt from your grave for this purpose? And you just get this yank in your gut. You just feel something in the pit of your stomach that is just saying no, then yeah, it's probably a no. Or in any other circumstances, if you are just using your own mind to meditate and try to communicate with them, you know, did any particular visuals pop into your mind? When you called out to them, did you get a whiff of a particular scent? You may even have full sentences form in your mind. But you really have to relax into this. Again, it's a game of patience and working on these muscles, these reflexes, your intuition, and learning to decipher and pick through, if you're looking for answers to come forward in your mind or in your mind's eye, it's really learning to pick through what are you coming up with, getting that answer that you want, and what is actually coming through. It does become instinctual, learning how to tell the difference, but again, it takes time. But of course, let's move on to using tools, because tools for spirit communication are very fun. So we've got the spirit board, also known as a talking board or a Ouija board, which is of course a classic. Then it's pretty much any other form of divination under the sun that you can possibly think of. So we've got, automatic writing, pendulums, dowsing rods, scrying mirrors or water scrying, tarot, runes, bone throwing, blah, 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 blah. Side note, I do have videos on pendulum use, runes, and bone throwing that are linked down below in the description box. These are a great way to communicate with spirit for any reason. Whether it's a specific person you knew when they were alive, whether it's a spirit that is residing in your home or in the space that you are attempting to do this spirit communication in, or whether you're just kind of reaching out into the great unknown, and whether this is for short-term, quick communication, or if it's long-term, you want to build a relationship with somebody. Using tools are very effective. So earlier I talked about you're in your protection circle, and within that circle you have the triangle. So once again, within the triangle is where you would place your tool. Like I mentioned, I'm not going to go into depth of how to use each of these items because that would just take way too long. But realistically, any of these would work. And I do suggest that you go with the one that you are the most comfortable with, that you are the most experienced with. Pendulums and dowsing rods are particularly useful when you have questions of a yes or no nature. That's going to give you the most clearest yes or no. But of course, like a pendulum, all you need is the pendulum board, which I do sell on my Etsy shop, to spell out. It works very similar to something like a spirit board. But when you're doing the yes or no questions, it removes a lot of the complexity of interpreting other forms of divination, especially if you're a beginner, which again is why I recommend you use something that you are the most familiar with. But of course, something like a spirit board, it's pretty clear. Something like tarot or runes, even if you're very experienced with those, can leave a lot open to personal interpretation. Now, I also want to say that I am well aware that there is a stigma that surrounds the use of the spirit board. Thank you, Hollywood. I just want to say it is no more dangerous than any other form of spirit communication if you are not being safe about it. There's nothing special about the talking board that makes it more dangerous than a pendulum. It's not about the medium that you're using, it's about the fact that you are inviting spirits into your space, which again is why it's important to know about banishing, about cleansing, and how to set up protection. So please don't let movies deter you from using something like a Ouija board, a spirit board. And don't let this message deter you from doing spirit communication at all. It really is safe. Just make sure you have your precautions set up. Finally, when you're done, you're ready to close out the conversation, make sure to thank them. That should probably go without saying, but thank them for their time and for their presence. It can be simple, it can be elaborate, you can pre-plan it, or you can wing it. Like I mentioned earlier, at that time is when you would want to place or pour out your offering. This is, of course, part of the thanking them process. Thank you so much for being here. Here's a little gift. And you can close it out. You can say whatever you want. I like to keep it simple. Thank you for your time and presence. Until we meet again, goodbye. I keep it just neat and tidy, just like that. So I know that this Samhain, I am definitely going to be partaking in some spirit communication. I am very excited about it. I think I've convinced my fiance to join me. But he's a little iffy, you know. I'll let you guys know how it goes in October's vlog when I get to it. In the meantime, I would love to hear about any fun, especially spooky stories, but just really any stories. They don't have to be spooky. Enlightening, interesting, spooky, whatever adjective applies. Stories that you all have of personal experiences with spirit communication. I'd love to hear about them. Drop them down in the comments below. That is it. Thank you all so much for being here. I really hope you have fun with this. It is a very fun thing to do. It can be a very enlightening practice, but again, please be safe. In the meantime, I will see you all soon. Stay magical.